Hello and welcome to A Shark's Perspective. So in a COVID-19 world, what are the changes we need to make or not need to make in regards to search engine optimization? Is there a pivot in our SEO that we should be making? And how will that drive more leads and traffic to your site? Or if you're not careful, drive them away? Jim McKinley is a founding partner of Uncommon Logic, an adjunct professor of digital marketing at Baylor University, and he's got a wide range of experience in online marketing, lead gen, and SEO. And on this episode, we'll discuss SEO, Jurassic digital marketing, making your listings pop, updating your local listings in case you have to wear a mask when going to Costco, meta descriptions and title tags, sharks near me, Chip and Joanna Gaines, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a logical Jim with a shark near you on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. Give our audience a brief overview of your story and your career to date, please.
Sure, no problem, Kenneth. So I actually started my digital marketing career all the way back in 1999.
Wow.
So that makes me, if you think about, yeah, exactly. So I'm a fossil as far as the digital marketing landscape goes. But right now I am the principal and a co-founder of a digital marketing ad agency called Uncommon Logic. So we do direct response digital marketing, and we actually do a lot of SEO in addition to paid media. In addition to that, I also teach digital marketing as an adjunct professor at Baylor University in Waco, Texas.
Nice.
So all this means is I've worked with a lot of companies and I've made just about every mistake that you can make out there. So I've got all the scar tissue to show for it.
Well, so where did the name Uncommon Logic come from?
So that's a great question. So there's actually a mathematical term called common logic. And because our agency is so rooted in math, we were exploring names like that. We're exploring math names, but we said, you know what? Not only do we bring a quantitative version or vision around digital marketing, but we also like to solve problems in an uncommon way and bring uncommon thinking. And so it's kind of the marriage of creative thought with hardcore math and statistics in the results. And so that's kind of where the name came from.
Nice. So I met you at a conference where we both spoke. You gave me a standing ovation, even though technically you were standing over on the side by the wall the whole time. Technically, though, it still counts. But, we both talk a lot about business growth and lead gen and things like that at various conferences. Let's talk a little bit about SEO today. So we're looking at SEO in particular coming emerging out of COVID-19 and where the world is. Where do people need to pivot their SEO efforts today to answer the specific problems that have pivoted as well by customers going forward?
It's interesting. If you think about all the different types and channels of digital marketing, in some ways, I would say SEO is the least impacted from what we've seen. And the reason why I say that is that Google's algorithm has not changed dramatically. So now it is constantly evolving, don't get me wrong, but it's not, some of the seismic shifts that we've seen in media habits has not really impacted the Google algorithm. And so a lot of the same principles that applied pre-COVID apply today. Things like having a technically clean website, having high quality content, a good user experience. Those are all the same. Now, what has really changed in the age of COVID and as we go forward in the kind of this post-COVID world is really some things around the content. So what are people searching for around your product or service? And secondly, what value propositions are customer engaging with? And so the biggest challenge that we have or we've seen for our clients is really, having them look at their content strategy. Where are there opportunities inside of their content? How have things changed? Imagine, for example, if you're Zoom. What has become, out of all of COVID, I think Zoom has now become a verb that we utilize in daily language. And by the way, it's not only like technical geeks like us, but my 80-year-old father says, hey, Jim, let's have a Zoom call, later on.
That's funny.
So as you think about that, think about how things have changed on the way people search and research around your topic. Because what that has caused a lot of our clients to do is really sort of rethink their content strategy and what sort of pieces of content should they be pushing out in the marketplace. And then the second part of that, the thing that we've seen, is some of the value propositions that users are responding to. So I'll give you one example. We work with a company called Blue Apron.
Yeah.
And this is a radical one. They're the home meal delivery service.
Sure.
Well, pre-COVID, they were kind of seen as a luxury item. It's kind of nice to have fresh home cooked meals that mom or dad can make for the family, etc. Well, in COVID, they went from a luxury to almost an essential item. And so the way that you had to think about, and this is both in the pay, but also in the SEO, on how you presented the company, the topic, the value propositions change. And if you're in the lead gen world, depending upon the product or service that you sell, those same sort of changes in value propositions or what resonates with the client will change as well.
Great point. So then what should we do first with the kind of content with structured markup, giving your content the chance to show those enriched search results? Talk about that, where we need to pivot.
Sure. I would say the other thing, and this is really, I think, the direction that you're going, Kenneth, is, SEO has evolved tremendously over the last 10 years. I mean, again, both of us are kind of fossils in this world. But if you think back 10 years ago, what SEO, the Google search engine had two parts, the ads on the top and the sides, and then organic. And by the way, it was all desktop search. There was no, none of this fancy maps and stuff like that. So you think about SEO today, and you have things like featured snippets, you have map packs, you have expanded text listings with site links, you've got Google products, you've got video carousels, you've got the knowledge panel. And most importantly, we also live in this world of mobile. And so I think where you're going with featured snippets is that, first off, what we need to realize as people playing in the SEO world is you can't win at everything. In fact, what you really need to do is you need to pick the areas which are the most important to your business and prioritize them. So if you're a small local insurance agency and part of your value proposition is that in-person interactions, well, then things like the maps are very important. But if you're a national insurance carrier, then
Exactly.
more of the traditional SEO is important. And so the thing that you need to do as a company is pick the things that you are important to you and try to win inside of those. And so the first one you brought up, and so we've got a list of like 5 things that we see our clients being successful with. And one of those very much is structured markup. And first off, what is structured markup? Structured markup is simply code that you put on your website,
Right,
which gives search engines additional information about your content. Very much like title tags
sure.
and meta descriptions. But what it does, it allows search engines to understand what type of content you're presenting, and then it allows them to display it differently inside of the search engine results pages. So if you've ever done a search and you saw like the star rating next to someone's listing, that's structured markup. Or if you've seen a video in the results that's right next to a listing, or you see it all the time. Now, what it is, and again, this is not, and by the way, this is not cutting edge SEO. And
Right.
anyone who's a technical SEO is going to be like rolling their eyes and saying, okay, great, tell me something I don't know. However, what a lot of people don't realize, Kenneth, is that Google has set up over 30 different types of structured markups. So there's things like you can mark things as an article, an FAQ, breadcrumbs, a book, a how-to, local business, Q&A, and each one of these will show up slightly differently in the search engines. And so what we do is we try to encourage our clients, or even our not our clients, to kind of take a step back. And by the way, Google's produced a really good guide. If you type in Google Guide to Structured Markup, they will show you all the different types, how they show up, and what you need to do. But what we encourage, this is one of those things, if you're a fan of the 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, this is one of those quadrant 2 activities that are important but not urgent. And so even though structured markup has been around for a while, we see a lot of companies not fully utilizing it. And what's so great about it is that once you've gone through the process of evaluating your content, figuring out what structured markup applies, and then putting the code in place, you're done. And that's a great thing, because then going forward, as Google seeks to understand, you have more likelihood that you're going to show up with those things that make your listing pop. As we know from digital marketers, that's a great thing. Ways that you can kind of stand out means more click-through rate, higher click-through rate, more traffic, and ultimately more customers and revenue.
So one of the things I noticed specifically with picking up food during the COVID era, if you will, was looking at restaurants and businesses local near me and noticing still how many weren't optimized for local directory listings. Whether you're a local one store only business or a national chain, talk about what you're seeing right now with businesses, with what they need to do to improve their local listings with all the changes going on. Because if you're pretty much shut down like most of the businesses were that weren't considered essential, or you are for takeout only, and if you don't have that optimization, I mean, it was pretty scary, the number of places I knew that were down the street because I'd physically driven past them. The ones that weren't, though, that were holes in the wall that had great food that I hadn't visited before, some of them were hard to find on businesses, and it continues to be a big problem for, not all national chains are optimized great either, because a lot of those national chains are owned by groups, those franchisees, maybe they own 10 different restaurants. It's not that, probably a horrible example, I was not even buying Applebee's, but Applebee's is not owned by 1,000, or a KFC or whatever is not owned by 1,000. It's generally owned by a restaurant group that owns 20 different franchises, and they might own 20 different Wendy's or whatever it is. But the local listings continues to be such a big problem, and I'm kind of curious what you're seeing both in your area and with a lot of the clients you work with today, and where they need to pivot and change this.
So I'm going to speak actually on 2 parts on local. The first part is kind of your local franchisee, or your local Applebee's, or your local insurance agency, etc. And for years, localization really for those sort of truly local businesses meant showing up in the Google Map Pack, and that's the Google Maps. But I think, as you brought up, what has really happened is that in this world of COVID, whether or not you're even open, like, for example, I went to a Costco here locally that they had changed their hours, but somehow it had not been reflected in Google. Yeah. And, so I've got my mask, I've got my hand wipes, and I'm ready to go into battle. And I get there and it's like, oh, it's not open for another hour. Oh my gosh. Well, so the first thing is, what we recommend with all local business is that it is something, it's like caring for a plant. You have to constantly water and care for the plant. And in this case, the plant is, it starts with Google My Business. So, first off, if you haven't claimed your Google My Business listing, please do so, because that is the primary source of information that Google utilizes. And inside your Google My Business listing, that's where you can list specific things like hours of operation, and whether or not you're closed or open on a holiday, etc. And so that's where I saw a lot of these local businesses, sort of drop the ball, is they stopped watering the plant. They stopped updating, because when you make a change, Google's very good about pushing that out. Yeah.
What they would generally do, Sam's and Costco did, is I saw the same thing when I was going there trying to hoard toilet paper and wipes and everything else I get my hands
It was
on.
you.
Bleach. It
You
was
in the toilet. Yeah.
exactly. But so when you get there and then you're in 400th in line, and
Right.
you
Right.
find it on there, and you click through on your mobile device to their website or to their app, then it says, please check our website, and then you've got to
Right.
hunt through the website
Right.
somewhere to find hours that are not even updated
Right.
on there either, and it's just
Right.
a hot mess when people don't
Mhm.
just do something basic. And I also was thinking about what's going on now when summertime's approaching, people are planning vacations. So if you think of somewhere, especially in a post-COVID world where restaurants, not everything's open the same time, and if you've
Right.
got people who are planning a trip to wherever it is where you are,
Hmm.
Corpus Christi
Yeah.
area to the beach, or to Florida or California or wherever, and you're spending time at the beach, there's a pretty good chance you might be looking for outdoor restaurants, things that are open,
Hmm.
a little more detail. And so I think those listings mean a lot more than they do before, because people are going to be planning ahead a lot more, whether they're going
Hmm.
to Sam's Club, they're buying a dinner for their family, or they're going on a trip during the summer or on some vacation. At any time go forward, it's those little things like optimizing local listings that can really make a dramatic impact on the revenue you bring to your business.
Absolutely. Well, and the customer experience. I mean, when I got
Absolutely.
to Costco, of course, like you, I wanted to go hoard toilet paper or paper towels or whatever, and I didn't want to be 400th in line, and so I
Yeah.
wanted to get there right when it opened. Well, when I found out it was going to be an hour later, I'm like, I'm not going to wait around here, so I skipped the trip. Now, not that Costco losing out on my
Yeah.
big
Made or break.
$150
Yeah.
purchase, but there's a pattern here, and so I think you really hit the nail on the head. Is in these when times are dynamic and there's lots of change, it's easy for things like managing your Yelp, your Google My Business listing. It's easy to let those things drop, and they can have a significant impact on the customer experience.
Yeah, but I will tell you this, there's also a collective idea that if I'm sitting in line waiting 30 minutes
Mhm.
extra because somebody didn't update it, by the time I get in there, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one, I'm ready to get in and get out with what I had on my list. If they had
Yeah.
optimized it and I was in a more relaxed nature, for example, then I
Hmm.
might have spent more time shopping as opposed to
Oh yeah.
just getting the essentials and then getting out of there as
Yeah,
quickly as
you're
possible.
right. Yeah, either you're like me, you left, or you're like your situation where you're like, I'm now running late. I've already wasted 30 minutes waiting in line on this. I need to get in and get out.
Yeah.
And so your likelihood to want to tarry and linger probably goes down as well.
Well, I get the honeydew list at home, so I got to get home and take care of that. And that list is always optimized. So,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. Mine just gets longer.
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know.
Well, then you talked about content earlier. How should we look at really changing the meta content as well and testing that kind of content from an SEO perspective with what we're going through in this world?
Yeah, so meta content, I think I'm going to make a slightly different point here because first off, meta content, that one of the reasons why it's so powerful is that it is one of the few things that you can directly influence how Google sees you. Because if you put a title tag and a meta description, in most cases, that is what Google uses. Uses for the search engine results pages.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be very powerful. The where I hesitate on making a bunch of changes specifically around COVID is that there is oftentimes a delay between when you make the change and when by the time Google's picked it up and by the time that they've actually you actually see the changes inside of the results pages. And so what we're seeing, and the reason why that's important is that, I mean, think about how fast things are evolving right now. I mean, if I think back to where my life was a month ago or 2 months ago, man, boy, we've gone through a lot of change. And I think things are going to continue to change quickly. And so I'd be worried specifically about people changing tons of their title tags and meta descriptions only to have things changed back. Now, that being said, I think there is a larger point here around companies actually considering having a long-term strategy around testing their meta content. Because if you think about it, most firms, if your company spends dollars on Google search ads, you probably spend time testing and optimizing your paid search listing. Looking at seeing, which keywords and value propositions do better or worse. While people, a lot of times people spend time doing that, very few people or firms actually spend time testing and optimizing their actual meta content. And the reason why that's important is we've seen example after example where by just optimizing your title tags and meta content, it can result in a significant bump in traffic, even staying same where, if you're position 3, even staying in that same position, you can actually increase the amount of traffic you get. So we have a case study that we did with a company we worked with called Rackspace, where we actually show by taking one of their pages for a website analytics tool that they had. And basically, we spent some time helping them optimize their title tags and meta descriptions. Implementing, just like you would. In fact, what I like to always say, or what we say internally around SEO, is you want your paid search team to write your title tags and meta descriptions, not your developer, because the developer will say something that's true, but they're not selling the click.
Exactly.
And so in the case of Rackspace, we took something that had been written by a developer, and we put, sort of a marketing overlay, things like repeating, keywords around the particular product, having clear call to actions, value propositions. And, in this particular case, by just doing those things, they saw a click-through rate go from about 3.5% to about 10% on that particular page inside of the Google search engine results pages without increasing their position. And so what you say about yourself matters. Position definitely matters. Don't get me wrong. If you're in position 1, on average, you're going to get more clicks than position 2. But people are reading the listings. And if you just have gibberish in there because Google wrote a title tags and meta description for you, you're not going to do as well as that if you write something. And so, like I said, I think a lot of companies miss the opportunity of getting a lot more free traffic by bringing basically the same things they do for their paid search ads and apply them to their title tags and meta descriptions.
So, a lot of folks still focused more on SEO as they pulled back all advertising. But you just alluded to something that I know works extremely well together in marrying that. How do you sort of take SEO and paid search together a little further? Let's dive into that a little bit deeper. As we come to emerge, where do people need to position themselves in your mind with SEO plus paid advertising?
So, we engage in conversations with our clients about this because there's, it's hard to, initially realize, well, wait a minute, if I'm showing up number 1 on SEO, why would I ever want to have a paid search ad? Why do I pay for the traffic that I get for free? Sometimes I'm a little suspect at some of the research that Google publishes.
Oh, yeah.
But in this case, we've actually seen it with our own clients. So Google's done a number of studies showing that if you have a paid search listing and show up inside of SEO, that your combined click-through rate is greater than if you just had one or the other.
Absolutely.
And so there is definitely a synergistic effect. And I think part of it, a lot of it has to do with signaling. If Google thinks, if you're willing to spend enough to show up in the paid search ads, and Google also thinks that you're enough of an authority to show up in the search engine results pages highly, that's a strong signal to a consumer or business that you are a worthwhile entity in which to engage. And so I think the first thing around them working together is just knowing that they do, typically, not always, actually tend to magnify one another. Now, the mistake that I will see sometimes between the two is when you have sort of a disjunction or disjointed messaging. So, for example, if your particular company touts quality of service, if that's your differentiator, that you can't tout quality of service in your SEO listings and then have lowest price in your paid search listings. And so I think the second thing that I would say in terms of those two things working together is to make sure that and I'm not saying you have to have identical value propositions. You don't have to have the same wording in both, but they need to be, pushing along in the same direction. So that's kind of the second big thing. And then the third thing is kind of post-click, thinking about what people are seeing once they either click on a search ad versus they click on an SEO listing, and making sure that in both cases, they have a quality user experience and engagement.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think we're just in such an age right now with so many non-click searches appearing. I think leveraging Google's help to magnify that's a great expression to think about where your presence is magnified, just being in multiple places, both in paid and top organic, is really going to be a differentiator going forward. And plus, you're going to see a lot of businesses shake out. And we've seen in 2020 where pay-per-click prices have fallen because there've been less people in the market, but it's going to become a much more competitive space as everybody's going to be going for it. So you don't want to just rely on, at least in my opinion, you don't want to just rely on what you think ranked well in organic only. It's going to take more to compete against everybody else.
Totally agree. And yes, we have seen some, and again, it's very much market dependent, but we have seen in some markets cost per clicks go down by 90%. And in some, they've stayed the same or actually gone up, depending upon the category. But I think you're going to see a normalization around those. I'll give you an example. Again, we talked about Blue Apron earlier. Well, Blue Apron, for a while, got so much business because, again, they went from being a luxury item to an essential good inside of COVID, that they had to dramatically scale back their marketing because their fulfillment centers couldn't keep up with all of the business. Well, by the way, it was the same for all the other, Sunbasket and all the other companies. And so what happened is for a while there, when you were searching for meal delivery, stuff like that, there was nobody advertising on it. And so you could have gotten clicks for 10 cents a click, sort of thing. But as things have sort of normalized, you see people coming back into the market and the cost per click is going back up. And so, yes, if you happen to be in a market where, cost per clicks have gone down, take advantage of that if you can do it profitably. But don't write your business plan over the next year of wanting to make sure that you're going to live off 10-cent clicks, because they're going to go away. And so that's why, again, I never get too excited about that, but that's why you have to be doing multiple things.
Agreed. And I think the value of looking at spending money on that paid advertising right now is that if a customer is searching for your product, or your service, whatever it is even more important today to be front and center if they're actually searching for it. Being that heavy amount of prominence when they're searching for it, as opposed to just being in a sea of content when everything is under a good economy like it used to be. I don't know, it's even more, but obviously you've got to do it when it's profitable as well. So what are the changes you're seeing as well with habits around mobile? We still, there's a lot of the things that you mentioned made me laugh about. How a typical SEO wonk is going to roll their eyes if we were to talk about, you need to focus more on mobile. But let's take the conversation a little bit further than that. What are you seeing beyond just that conversation? I've found myself even starting to think a lot more about just some relaunch of my own website and stuff like that. But I still find so much traffic and things that I've done, even sitting in the home, have just been done on mobile.
Yeah, Kenneth, I think you hit upon definitely a trend that we're seeing, is that we all kind of all of us in the digital marketing world kind of roll our eyes a little bit because Google has been saying this is the year of mobile since about 2000.
Oh, since Alexander Graham Bell.
Yeah, exactly, and so we kind of roll our eyes, and I think two things have happened. Is as we all know, more and more traffic has gone to mobile, but I think we have seen it is definitely accelerated in the age of COVID. Because as people have been, and yes, like me, I brought my laptop home and I was doing work on it. However, I found myself doing, if I wanted to go sit outside, I might bring my iPad out there, or I might, be.
It's more random searches to keep your brain busy.
Exactly. And so for a lot of our clients, we have seen the amount of mobile traffic increase. And so just from that standpoint, and by the way, we may see a little normalization of that once people, the economy opens back up, but it still doesn't belie or change the trend that we're definitely
What's the habits
seeing.
people are forming?
Yeah, exactly. So from that standpoint, I think it's important. When I put my SEO lens on, I mean, mobile is where it's at because, and this is something Google did a couple of years ago, is that Google uses the mobile version of your website for their SEO indexing and ranking. Now, I'm not saying it's not the only thing, and I'm not saying that, but they have said, this is actually a quote. I'm going to read an actual quote from Google saying on this. It says, since the majority of users now access Google search with a mobile device, Googlebot primarily crawls and indexes pages with the smartphone agent going forward. So they said primary, not only, but so you got two things working for you here. One, more and more people are doing it, and Google has said this is what's important. And so from an SEO standpoint, the mobile version of your website is what is the most important.
How much time do you actually spend focused on Microsoft Bing?
So I don't know what the latest numbers are. 10% market share.
It's been 10% in air quotes for the last
10 years. I don't know what it really is. I think it does skew depending upon markets. We've seen that it tends to skew slightly older audience. It also skews towards the audience that can't figure out how to change the default browser or default search engine in their browser. So there's a certain market there.
But that being said, it's always outperformed Google.
I was just going to say this. We kind of use this. I wouldn't say it's a secret weapon, but it's because it's not really a secret. I think what happens is a lot of organizations end up spending 100% of their time optimizing and looking at Google and 0% of their time. If they would just spend, even if they just did 90-10 and spent 10% of their time optimizing, Bing, I think they'd see a payoff because, as you said, for most of our clients, Yahoo Bing outperforms Google in terms of, not all, but in terms of number of acquisitions or leads, and typically at a better cost. And so, in fact, we've even thought about, should we go to some big companies and say, look, like I talked to a very large company based in Salt Lake City that spends $1 million a month on paid search. They don't even look at their Bing account. And so I even thought about setting up an offering to as an agency to just say, look, just give us your Bing stuff and we'll just manage it. Because at $1 million a month, that they should be spending $100,000. And by the way, they're spending like $10,000 a month, then they're spending $1 million on Google. Let us spend that for you. And you can, because what happens is, at some point you start maximizing the things you can do. You start hitting that headroom. And this is a lot of times an area that people overlook.
Oh, completely agree. And I used to get frustrated with one of the agencies that I worked with when I was on a brand side. I would push them and allocate money for Yahoo and Bing
Hmm.
and try to push them, and they just weren't used to it because they were used to Google. And again, that's
Right,
one channel. It's
right,
the most important channel, but it's one channel,
right,
and you can't. I don't know
right.
of anybody who wouldn't welcome a pretty good increase
Yeah,
on any channel, let alone they
right.
never talk about it. So you will never
Yes,
see spoken at a conference how to optimize your Bing. You'll hear social, your Facebook, your
right,
Instagram hacks, how to
right.
work with Google, but nobody ever spends any time giving a little bit of love to Yahoo or Bing, and it's
You know
really
what?
interesting.
I think you've hit upon a
That's
conference
my new
topic, a
speech.
speaking
Yeah,
topic. I think
I
that
may
would
do it.
look. I think that would be an interesting thing because you could show data on that,
Oh,
and
I've done
and
it. Yeah. I mean, I used to do it, and you would see the uptick in conversions
mhm,
as well.
mhm.
So that's where, well, next conference I run into you, maybe that's where
There you go. There you
what
go.
I'll be
Well, no,
speaking
but
on.
what'll happen is I'll be talking about it. You'll be like, "Hey, that
Yeah.
came from that." It'll be like an angry
Yeah.
confrontation at the end.
But then
So,
90% of the people will be at your session, 10% will be at mine. So,
right.
well, Jim, I didn't get to ask you this when I last saw you at a conference, but I asked this of all my guests. What is your favorite kind of shark and why? You're on a shark's perspective.
Oh man, I have to admit something. I'm looking at your shirt right now,
Yeah, my
Kenneth,
Jaws
and it's a
shirt.
Jaws shirt. I'm gonna confess something here that's maybe way too personal. When I was very young, I think when did Jaws come out? Was it 1977 or 1978? It was one of those years when the movie came out, and I think it was
1975.
75. Well, so my dad, this will date myself, took me there when took me to see the movie in the theaters when I was 7 years old. So I was 7 years old when my dad took me. He told my mom he was taking me to some Disney movie. He thought it'd be fun, not trying to mess with me, but he thought it'd be fun for me to see the movie Jaws. Ever since then, I have a complete irrational fear of
Yeah,
sharks,
and that's the
and
sad
so
problem that so many people
I
have.
know,
Yeah.
I know, and I hate to admit it. My favorite shark is probably the one that's not near me because
Yeah, there you
in
go.
fact, that's probably
That's
why
the
I've never
SEO
been.
shark, the shark not
That's
near
why
me.
I've never been scuba diving,
Yeah.
probably because of that,
Wow.
and it's bad. I probably need to like go through some sort of therapy and try and get over my fear.
Well,
But
look, I'm starting a mastermind. You're a perfect example of the people I'm going to take into the water to help them get over those irrational fears.
there you go.
It took me a second to remember that Benchley's novel came out in 1974, and only a year later, Jaws was out on video. So
Wow.
it was so successful a book, and it's a great book, but it's completely unlike the normal world where
Hmm.
swimming with sharks is something that I try to do as often as I can, even without
Uh-huh.
a cage. But you've got to have a healthy respect for them. So, well,
Yes,
Jim, it's that
absolutely.
special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions you're going to be asked today?
Oh boy, I don't know. You didn't prep me for this, so yeah, sure.
All right, number one, a performance marketing conference like LeadsCon or Lead Generation World or one of those, or an SEO conference like MozCon.
Mhm. I'd rather go to something like Lead Generation World or LeadsCon, just because I'm old, and as I've gotten older, I become less and less technical,
Oh, how
and
funny.
so I really enjoy getting to talk to the business owners and about the business as a whole, as opposed to the real technical, insights on how the Google algorithm works.
Interesting. Interesting point of view, but that good thoughts. All right, number two, Austin city limits or South by Southwest. You're in Austin, Texas, so
Oh boy. I would actually say Austin city limits. And the reason why I say that is that, South by has become more and more of a party that
oh, it's a
happens to have a
yeah.
conference around it. And boy, I sound like one of these disenfranchised locals because during South by you can't get downtown and stuff like that. I love South by because we get to see some great people. But I'll tell you, there is something about going to Austin city limits, and you kind of get the sense of history because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the show's been going on since like the 70s or 80s. I mean, it's been going on forever, and you kind of feel like you're part of this longer storyline, sort of thing. And I've had the opportunity, to go a couple of times, but I would love to go back.
All right, number 3, the Dallas Cowboys or the Houston Texans?
Oh gosh. See, all right, this is, man, you're going to all my pain points here, Kenneth.
There's only one
So
right answer. The question the show may end if you don't answer this correctly.
Oh no, pressure. So I'm frantically trying to look around behind you to see. Well, so here's, so I'll give you a 2-part answer. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
And so I've been twice spurned by the NFL. So, my thing would be none of the above. Now, I've lived in both cities. I lived in both Houston, Texas, and in Dallas. However, when I lived in Houston, it was the Oilers, not the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
So of the two, I have a deeper relationship with the Cowboys than I do with the Texans.
Good answer. Good answer.
Right.
All right, number 4. You teach at Baylor. Here's two famous folks. One of them got a marketing degree, and the other got a communications degree. Chip Gaines or Joanna Gaines? Chip had the marketing degree. Joanna had the communications degree from Baylor.
Okay, I'm not surprised. So what's interesting is
at least that's what Google said, so you know it's right.
Yeah. I that's what I was going to guess because I think I remember that. So I have an 8 and 10-year-old, and for whatever reasons, they are really into Fixer Upper right now.
It's funny.
And so every night they're like, "Can we watch a Fixer Upper?" Which is great until they start, expressing a lot of opinions about the way our house is.
Oh yeah.
And how come we can't do a Fixer Upper to our house?
Yeah.
And I guess that they're going to have their own network called the Magnolia Network. It's just amazing. I mean, having spent a lot of time in Waco and to have Waco be literally a legitimate tourist destination, it is quite crazy to me. And I mean, it's great for the city.
Yeah.
But they've done some amazing things.
Well, it's smart of them to own their own property. So, but pick one, Chip or Joanna.
Well, I just think Chip is really funny.
Yeah.
I think both of them are wonderful people. Chip just feels like the guy, is like the goofy guy you knew in college that, kind of has a job now but never fully grew up.
Me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not a dig on Joanna,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you, both of them feel like just people you could just hang out with.
True. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Man, I'm a biscuit guy. That's just how I am. I don't know if it's being down here in Texas for too long, but I guess both of them are down here. But I'm a biscuit guy.
Good man. So, Jim, where can people find out more about you, what you're doing in the marketing space, and follow your thoughts and more?
Sure. Well, the biggest place for us is going to be on our website, which is uncommonlogic.com. We post regularly, post content on things that we're seeing in the marketplace and just kind of different ideas. And so, if anyone wants to read more about, what some of our current thoughts are, that would be the best place to check us out.
Jim, thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
And I appreciate it, Kenneth. Thank you for your time, and good luck. And I hope all of us can have a smooth transition out of our COVID world.
Amen. So there was my conversation with Jim McKinley, a founding partner of Uncommon Logic, an adjunct professor of digital marketing at Baylor University, and he's got a wide range of experience in online marketing, lead gen, and SEO. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, Jim thinks SEO may be the least impacted aspect of your marketing by COVID-19. Interesting point, especially since Google's algorithm changes weren't thankfully majorly altered during the pandemic. During normal times, when they make changes, this is something that normally spins everybody's heads. But these are the things that are the same principles in SEO you should apply with best practices. He said what has changed is content and what people are searching for and your value proposition that people are engaging with today. Dive deeper there to find your opportunities, specifically for lead gen, in that value prop for people and customers. What they need is so much more important than what you used to want to push. But as he said, be careful about making what I'll just basically call wholesale changes. When you think about how fast things are evolving, the changes you make may not catch up in Google by the time you have to make another change in another direction. He did, though, mention, and I like having a larger and longer term strategy on testing meta content. Great point. And great points on aligning some of the SEO efforts with what you do in paid search. Really good stuff there. Make sure to align some of your SEO efforts with what you're saying, so to speak, in those paid search phrases. Second, you have to update your local listings and map packs. That's got to be consistent, especially with all the changes. Perfect and practical examples are when you go to a location and you find out the hours are wrong per what the local listing showed. I started planning out a vacation, thinking about the restaurants I was going to go to in a week or two, and I see wrong, not updated listings. It seems obvious to most SEO folks, but not enough businesses are updating this. And if you know someone is looking for your business online, then update the hours and other information needed. The world has changed, and don't let that affect an obvious SEO principle that cannot be ignored. Third, don't forget Bing and Yahoo. No one talks about them enough. I make fun of the redheaded stepchild in Bing very often for quite a few verticals, though, where I've upped my spend. They tend to outperform Google, and it's happened for both me and Jim. There is a cap to the audience, but who wouldn't take an increase in any form through some basic optimization on a search channel? Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Here's a logical choice that should never be uncommon. Join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.